Hello, hello, everyone.
Greetings!
Welcome. I'm going to try to have the chat so I can see the chat and also get back to OBS when I need to. This is probably a fool's errand, but we'll see. And also try to make sure there's a pixel of Discord on the screen so it will capture your video.
Yes,
If Jeremy freezes, let me know. It's my fault and I'll fix it. Unless he's doing a bit, which could happen.
that could certainly happen.
Yeah, so welcome everyone to the official 6th anniversary day, right? October 16th.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, October 16th, 2014. Sentinels came out on iPad and Android tablets. And we actually did the launch. I can't remember what the initial launch was. That a big mess or was it
It
actually okay?
was. No, it was a big mess. Yeah, it actually took a couple days for it to start showing up everywhere for iOS, and it was a whole thing. It was not fun.
Just gonna get that light on.
But it started the fun tradition of Apple's messing up our launches, which has continued through other products and other things as well. So
Yeah, it worked okay with the update this week at least. And actually, like, we were waiting for the Apple update to go live, and it went live like exactly as Guys' theme song started playing, so it was like perfect timing.
perfect timing. Guys was hacking the Gibson.
Yeah. Okay, so actually need to pop this tab out so I can still see the chat while I'm looking at this. Go away, Google thing. Okay. All right. Oh, and probably I covered Discord up. There we go. Discord have a pixel. Uh, all right. So we're ready to start our thing.
I think we should start the thing.
All right. So we're gonna have sort of a little presentation or discussion about the state of the multiverse, and then we're gonna have Q&A. So if you have questions, please hold on to your questions until the Q&A portion, or we might miss them. So yeah, I mean, we'll still be interacting with you in the chat, but main questions we'll want to hold on. All right, here we are in 2020, not 2400 AD, but we want to talk just a little bit about how we got here. Since it's the 6th anniversary, we're looking back at how we got here. We need to know how we got here before we can go forward, right? So,
Indeed.
yeah. So, way back, I mean, there's even the before times, right? The before times before Sentinels at all, we were making apps, Jeremy and I, since like 2009, late 2009. But in
Yep.
2011, we were launching a game called Uncle Slam. And we took it to PAX East, and we actually had a booth at PAX Prime, and that all happened. That's what I looked like. That's what Jeremy looked like. We were babies at that time. And it turns out our booth with Uncle Slam was right next to another booth with these three guys.
And every year now, actually, when I go to PAX, every time I've been to PAX West since then, I go to the 6th floor and I take a picture of that door. Like,
Yeah,
you can see the door there that's between where you can see our two big TVs with the American flags and then the Sentinels of the Multiverse banner. That door between there, we weren't supposed to go back there, but we kind of like appropriated it and
yeah.
used it as like a hiding area.
It's our break room. And like if we had like
Yeah, exactly.
stuff to unpack or like, cards to whatever, like things to prepare, we'd do it back there or take a break. Um, but yeah, we obviously met Christopher and Adam. Was Paul there? I don't think
He
so.
was.
He was there? Okay. But mainly Christopher and
I'm
Adam were
pretty
there
sure
at the
he was
booth.
there.
I think he was, yeah. Most of the time. I don't think any of the pictures show any of them actually that I have. But played some Sentinels. Is that John in a wig? No, I had long hair then. I
You
grew
did
my hair
indeed.
out for a couple years, and yes, played some Sentinels. Took a copy home. I should have my Young Legacy original card and my signed print of Gatling gun. I think it's either Gatling gun or turret mode. I think it might be turret mode. That's the original print signed by Adam. That you could tell, like compared to the newer prints you get from Kickstarters, it's like this was definitely done on like their home inkjet printer.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I was going to mention too, the woman there that's interviewing me, that was actually for G4 TV. I don't remember if I'm 99% sure it never actually went up. I think there was like a shot of us in like a montage at one point, but the interview and the full video that they did with me there did not end up going up on the network, unfortunately.
Right, and so actually I'm going to move this up to see it. This bit here is our old logo, and we found this thing with the horns in Seattle somewhere. And so we posed with it with our Handelabra hoodies. Hey, Christopher, welcome.
Yeah.
So that's me and Matt and Aaron, some OG Handelabrats.
Actually, Christopher will be able to answer this. It was all three of you at the original PAX West, right? You, Adam, and Paul. John wasn't sure if he remembered Paul being there or not, and I'm pretty sure it was all three of you, but I don't remember for
sure. Cool. Yeah. So turns out Uncle Slam didn't really succeed, but it was necessary so that we met the three of them there, and it was all three of them for sure. And so we got the game, took it home, planted the seed, and I really liked the game and played it a bunch and was like, I want to be able to track my hit points better when I'm playing this game. So I made an app called Sentinel Sidekick, and we didn't even talk to them about it. I think originally we're just like, let's just publish this and whatever, right? He was against. Were you?
He was against Sentinel Sidekick?
Well, I mean, we made it and we put it out, and then I think we contacted them and were like, hey, could we get the official art and put it in? He didn't want it to exist. But then, I mean, that might have been an internal discussion at GTG, right? That we weren't privy to about him being against it.
That's certainly possible.
I also remember, Christopher, when heroes had HP and max HP that could change. That was in the original version, you can see here. But yeah, I guess so. I'm glad Christopher liked it, because then we were able to make a deal with them to have the official artwork. No, interrupting is good. Please interrupt. Do you want to join the call?
Yeah, this is the state of the digital multiverse, and we are in the historical context area. So any historical context you would like to add, we are happy to have it.
Absolutely. And this is the original icon for Sentinel Sidekick as well, which is pretty cool. But it did, of course, get updated with the official artwork of Legacy once we had that for Sentinel Sidekick 2.0, I believe, brought in the official artwork. And that was our official.
I think that's right.
Our first business relationship with Greater Than Games. I'm actually going to throw this link into the chat if anyone wants to. Oh yeah, record the letters page. Enjoy. We posted a blog post back in 2015 going over Sentinel Sidekick progression and the history of that and the original prototypes of Sentinels and stuff. We're going to show a couple of them on here. But the main thing about that was our first business relationship with Greater Than Games, and so were able to, continue pestering them to make the digital version of the game. And then they said yes. Well, eventually there was legal issues, but it all got resolved.
Yeah, and I've actually, I've talked about this with Paul multiple times, so he's fine with us telling this story. Basically, at Gen Con 2011, when Sentinels made its sort of public debut, a company approached them because they basically had a 10x10 booth in the back corner, and the line to get to the booth was down the hall and around the thing, because it was one of the big darlings of the show. And someone at that show was like, hey, can we license this from you? And my understanding, and Christopher can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe he's taken off, but I believe the story is that they had sort of driven to Gen Con with a certain number of copies of the game, and they needed to sell a certain percentage of them in order to have money to get gas to drive back.
Yeah, I think it was most of they need to sell most of the games or all the games.
Yeah, exactly. And it did so well that they were just doing great. And somebody came up and was like, hey, can I license this? And for digital, I'll pay you $1,000 to do it or something like that, to just lock up the rights. And they said yes, because who's going to say no to $1,000 when you don't even have gas money? But that held the rights for, I think it was 3 years. And so when we started asking them, even right in, at PAX that year, oh, hey, if you ever want to do this digitally, let us know. Then a little later, when we finally did Sentinel Sidekick, and we were like, hey, what about doing it as a real game? That was when they were like, yeah, so funny story, we already sold the rights. So if they ever don't do it, or if they ever come back to us, we'll let you know. And
Yeah.
that
And they
then
didn't,
happened.
because they realized, hey, this game is really complicated and it's hard to do digitally. And we're like, we're still going to do it. We have
Don't
an
tell me the odds.
exactly. So as part of this was basically us rebooting Handelabra to focus on digital tabletop with Sentinels as the first game. Here's some sort of early prototypes. This one on the left here is actually almost just like, it's literally a photo of the legacy card divider and pictures of the cards sort of laid out. On the right hand side is our actual first prototype that we actually implemented. You can see it's actually in a virtual world of Megalopolis, really rough stuff, and cards being dynamically generated. You can tell because like the text goes off the end of the card and stuff. So that's
Yeah.
that was sort of the initial prototypes where we were looking for, how does this play and how does this all work in Unity and everything. And obviously, it ended up much different, but you can see some elements have carried through to the present day, even.
Yeah,
And
like
then,
that action icon and stuff. Like some of those things, like, or not action. It's like the active
yeah,
whatever
the
effects
effects
icon.
icon, or like even back on this one, just like how the text is displayed in some areas, like based on the keyword
Mm-hmm.
boxes and stuff like that. Uh, so we announced that in 2013 with like a really rough preview thing, and then once we were actually making the game, we did a better announcement with Baron Blade. So I'm gonna play that video right now. Enjoy.
You claim to fight for freedom, but yours is a legacy of destruction, a legacy of death. It matters not who you surround yourself with, Mr. Parsons. No nation, no heroes, no sentinels you can assemble can hope to stand in the face of the inevitable. The moon is a constant reminder of the passage of time. Is it not fitting that now the end of your time is also the end of the moon's time? I will leave your world in ruins. Whatever remains will be mine.
All right, Jeremy and we should just do the voices on that ourselves and have the video muted, I think.
Will be mine. And that was probably, I believe, that would have also been the first debut of the theme song ever.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was at the end was like the theme song, right? Like, because previously it was like a piece of stock music or
Yeah, we
something.
had used some stock music. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 2013. And 2014 was when we were really working hard on getting it. And that trailer actually came out in 2014, and then we actually launched the game in the fall of 2014. Uh, 6 years ago today.
6 years ago today, as it turns out.
As it happens, 6 years ago today. And so, yeah, it's a really great trailer. It's still like really, I don't know, it still really works. Even though,
Yeah.
Oblivion is obviously more dangerous than Baron Blade, he's still, Baron Blade's still scary. Yeah, so it came out on iPad and Android tablets. These are actually not public. These screenshots here are not like the release version, but they're pretty close. The first one is pretty close, and a pre-release version, and the other one on the right, which is probably I'm on top of it, is a concept for how like some of the target choosing stuff could work, and you can see that like a lot of stuff is similar to that. Yeah, and you can see a lot of things. Oh, everything went mission control. Okay, that was just on my second screen.
It's weird.
Yeah, there's like a mouse gesture that causes that, but I'm not sure how I'm doing it. I need to turn that off. Baron Blade on the icon.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember the conversations that we had about choosing targets because, like, even back then there were card games where this card attacks this other card and you drag it and it hits.
Mm-hmm.
But like we realized very early on that it's like one of the things that can happen in Sentinels, obviously, like you can hit friendly targets, you can hit targets that you can't see on the screen if there's 100 cards in play. So we knew that it was going to have to be a dialogue. It wasn't going to be quite as simple as like Hearthstone where you just drag and hit. And so that we went through a lot of iterations to find something that felt both intuitive but also gave you all the information that you were going to need at any given time.
Yeah. One of the things like Hearthstone and Slay the Spire have a huge advantage in that they are designed for the screen to begin with. So even though like they're sort of card games, they're designed with that limitation in mind. Like Slay the Spire, you can have 10 cards in hand, and that's a limit for a reason because that's what fits on the screen. Whereas you can have 40 cards in hand in Sentinels because that doesn't matter on the tabletop. I mean, it kind of matters, but it doesn't, Yeah. And so we need to deal with that. We need to deal with, all sorts of weird stuff that, a game that's designed for digital doesn't have that. So,
Citizen, that's actually, we had that internal conversation as well. Part of the reason not to use fully animated 3D environments was because it just became prohibitively expensive, not only in terms of time and money, but also prohibitively expensive in terms of like power of the device.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't have, these 3D animated environments happening all the time. And exactly what you said as well, which is that, once you really get to know Sentinels, you want to be able to sort of you've got your mental model of what's happening in the game in your head. And so in that case, the UI should sort of fade to the background and just sort of give you what you need to do. And so that was how we went from animated fun 3D backgrounds to like, well, we'll make the 3D backgrounds, but then we'll capture them and they'll be like, individual panels of a comic page instead of this big swooping 3D thing.
Yep. So that went through lots of different iterations. I still kind of, if you go to that blog post, there's a link to the old video of the swooping around. It's still kind of fun. And we actually did some
sure. I mean,
yeah, it's fun, but I think it's just, we made the right call. It's just like, oh, that would have been neat too.
Yeah, and there were definitely early builds of the iPad game that had like the animated Insula Primalis.
Oh yeah.
In one of the openings, and then it was just screenshots in all the others.
Yeah, but that was too prohibitive performance-wise. So, cool. All right, so yeah, we launched the game. That was like 6 years ago, and then we did a lot. We came out with 4 expansion packs in the first year, 2015. We added online multiplayer. We started the weekly one-shots, which have still been going every week. So there's like more than 250 of them now. 2016, we added support for phones. We added 4 expansion packs and the foil heroes with the Season 2 Kickstarter, starting off Season 2 with a bang, with vengeance and everything. 2017, we added Villains of the Multiverse as well as challenge modes and a lot of variants. That was the start of like variant events that also happened in 2018, I think, too, right? In 2019, the evolution of Odd Allies and the Prime Wardens and all of that stuff. In 2018, 2 more expansion packs, and 2019, of course, Oblivion. Jean-Marc mentions, what if we just took screenshots of the background instead of having them animating? Yeah, so it ended up being like a good direction, but it was something we weren't sure about to begin with. Jeremy's covering the Void Guard. Oh no. Here, you can see all the stuff on the screen now. And while we're disappeared, I'm going to go ahead and play the video that we posted for the
let me do a quick let me do a quick intro to that. So
sure.
The timing of this worked out in a really fun way, which was that as we were finishing up, I think it was actually Wrath of the Cosmos, we were already obviously planning ahead for Season 2. And when we did, the way we sort of announced it was that it was actually at the end of the Wrath of the Cosmos listening party. So, as we just did a listening party on Wednesday for the Heroes of the Multiverse, we were doing Wrath of the Cosmos, and there were a couple really awesome things that happened during Wrath of the Cosmos musically. One of which was Jean-Marc decided to do a reimagining of the Sentinels theme song, but with the soundscape of the Bloodsworn Coliseum. and it was the first time we had actually revisited the theme. And so we're going through the listening party, and then we finish up all of the hero stuff, all of the villains, all the environments, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, and now we've got one super special bonus for you. And we played the Bloodsworn Coliseum remix of the main Sentinels hero theme, and then it immediately transitioned into what you're about to see. And it was, I still, when I need to feel like a warm fuzzy, I will go to the Twitch and load up the very end of that song and watch this video start to play and watch the responses of people. And I'll find it and I'll post it here so people can take a look at it after the fact, because it was so much fun.
That's
so
true.
Yeah, so take a look at
great reveal.
Yeah, and this is what you're gonna see now.
You claim to fight for freedom. You wave that flag as if it means something. This lie you tell yourselves, it sickens me. But I have been watching, and even I am not above learning from my mistakes. You are all weak, but it is in working together that you gain strength. No matter. I am building a team of my own. We will have satisfaction. We will have retribution. We will have vengeance.
All right. Very chilling, but also exciting.
Yeah, and one of the other things, this is another one of those situations where I had like a really specific thing in mind, and I went to Jean-Marc with it, and I was like, so, and I think if I remember right, I think I actually sang it to him the way that I want. Like, I was like, hey, I want to take the Sentinels theme and make it like a Villains of the Multiverse theme, but but using the same theme. And like, what you'll notice is like the da na 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 da 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 na 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 da da na 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 na. It has this like swinginess now, where it's like the da na na da da da, like a more of a marchy kind of thing going on. And I remember singing it to Jean-Marc and him being like, yeah, I guess that could maybe work. Let me take a look and see if I can get it to work well. And of course, he's Jean-Marc, so of course he got it to work perfectly. But it's just, yeah, and I remember people being so surprised that they were like, oh my God, it's the same theme song. Wait, but it's evil. Oh no. And it was just, yeah, it was super great. So,
yeah. Yeah, so that you can see, like, we did a lot over those years, getting all the Sentinel stuff, and here we are in 2020, season 2 finale. It is all done. But is it? Also wanted to mention,
so the game is over.
We like
it's a dead
released
game. It's a dead game now.
We, aside from all that, we released 4 other games.
Well, yeah, and actually, that was the other thing I was going to say is, one of the reasons I think why some of these things with the timing could work so well is when you're a studio that's only working on one thing, it's very easy to do that. So the timeline of season 2 was, as I said, was like, all right, we're finishing Wrath of the Cosmos. We're launching Wrath of the Cosmos. Now we're working on Mini Pack 3. We do the listening party, which announces that season 2 is coming. We then, a couple months later, kick off the Kickstarter. We launch Mini Pack 3 during the Kickstarter. I think it was either right at the beginning or somewhere in the middle of the Kickstarter. We did a listening party for Mini Pack 3 and some other stuff during the Kickstarter, and then that led us right into finishing the Kickstarter and starting it on all the season 2 content. Obviously it would be a lot harder to do that if we're also working on Bottom of the Ninth and One Deck Dungeon and Hand's End and Spirit Island. So it's a lot easier when you only got one thing on the plate.
Yeah. Yeah, Nerd with a Pencil, this is the 2020 we want. So if we're going to make it, we're going to make the rest of 2020 how we want it.
Exactly.
And I guess I could have a slide with like the explosions or whatever from the other card. Yeah. So today we're announcing what's coming next for Sentinels, and the big thing that we want to talk about is this.
Ooh, I hope it's cool.
Is it cool?
Is it going to be cool? I hope it's cool.
It is Steam Workshop support and mods and user created content. That is the thing that we want to do next for Sentinels. And we are starting it today. So you saw there's a dev stream as part of the stream today. That dev stream is going to be starting work on Steam Workshop support.
Hooray!
Yeah. Yay! Unlimited content. Chat seems to approve.
Yeah, so this was, and speaking of the season 2 Kickstarter, this was one of the bigger stretch goals that we had put out there, with doing video game Kickstarters. We've now done 4 of them, and it's really interesting because we are, we like to think of ourselves as being, tabletop adjacent, and the vast majority of the types of Kickstarters and companies that we partner with, the way the board game Kickstarters work is you launch it funds within the first day, maybe the first couple days, and then it like goes stretch goal, stretch goal, stretch goal, stretch goal. Like you usually raise at least 2 to 3 times minimum what your original goal was. We have never been able to quite make that work. With Sentinels, our original goal was 80. Even including like pre-sales and other sorts of things, we got to somewhere in the neighborhood of 150. But the Steam Workshop support was even higher than that. And it didn't seem like something that we were going to be able to get to until we're starting to look at like, well, what could the future hold for Sentinels? We want to know, obviously, there's the cauldron that people have created. There's people making their own decks. There's even a couple people on Steam who've already started to hack together some of their own mods.
It's
right?
true. There's a mod for Mr. Fixer that you can get. That someone is like, I'm gonna try to make a mod, and like we like helped them out a little bit to give them some ideas and stuff. So.
Yeah, and so we've got a question here. Origami Swami says, so we'll be able to make new decks, ? We'll be able to play creations with other players. Right, so this is what Steam Workshop support means, is that the mod world of this game will be hosted on Steam so that you'll be able to subscribe. The way it works is you can subscribe to mods that are published, and like, if I can't speak specifically to how well that's going to work in multiplayer. John, I'm sure can get into some of that. But the idea would be that like you could create a deck, publish it on the Steam Workshop, and then yes, your friends could download it and play it as well.
Yeah. So our focus in the Steam Workshop initially is going to be on enabling you to make new decks, new variants, so new heroes and villains and environments, variants for existing heroes, variants for existing villains, potentially new content like in Oblivion. Like I have this cool idea for Oblivion Shield. Let's add it to the game. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at focusing on. There's other kind of mods too that we'll definitely be looking at later on, but that's kind of the main thing. So like, you think about the cauldron or like player created variants and stuff, and you'll be able to go to Steam Workshop, subscribe to the mod, it downloads automatically and goes into the game, and you will be able to play them on multiplayer with other people on Steam who have the mod as well. There's a line at the bottom there, which is in the future, maybe one of the things we'd like to do is if there's, a mod that's really good and really well put together, be able to package that up and make it available on mobile as DLC. That's sort of like down the road because obviously it needs mods to exist and be polished and everything and figure out how the dynamics of that works. But, and then at that point, then like, suppose... Cauldron is a good example. Like, suppose their Cauldron mod exists and is finished on Steam and everyone loves it, and then we, work with the Cauldron developers to package that up so that it can be on mobile too, and then mobile players can play it as well. So that's kind of the long-term plan there, to sort of just continue expanding the content, and then it's not just us having to expand the content. We have all the world of Sentinels players are helping to build that multiverse of content, which I think is really appropriate for Sentinels. And as
I keep trying to break in and realize that I just realized that I was muted. So because I'm an idiot. So the model for this that you can imagine if you're, I don't know if anybody out there plays, like for instance, Binding of Isaac. But Binding of Isaac was a game that actually started life as a Flash game. Then it came to Steam. It had a huge mod community, And eventually a lot of those mods got incorporated into full sort of expansion packs to the game, which are then available on other platforms. So like for instance, I play Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus, which is the version that I got for my Switch, which included the Afterbirth Plus expansion, which took a lot of inspiration from various individual mods that had sort of worked with the community, and then the developer worked with them to package all up and then sell it. So, if this is popular and if it does really well, that is something we're super interested in doing.
Yeah. And actually, one thing I was going to look up and I forgot to look up was this. We might be the first digital tabletop game to have mods, but I'm not sure. Like to officially start supporting mods. We obviously haven't released it yet or anything, but like we're going to be working on it. But I'm not aware of any other ones. But if anyone is, post in and I'll be happy to retract my potential claim.
Yeah.
The Walking Target mentions our approach to stretch goals about funding, meaning funding means it will happen, not funding means it's not guaranteed. But not that it can't happen, and that's definitely good to point out that like. This is a stretch goal we had that we didn't achieve, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Which, we get that question literally every time we have a stretch goal. It's like, but here's an example. It can happen still.
Yep.
And there's probably other things that we've also done, but this is sort of the most notable one, I think, of a stretch goal that didn't make it, but we're still going to do it. It just sort of, we had to get to the point where we could do it.
Well, and so I don't think you covered this too much, but do you want to talk about how this is going to work in terms of community involvement here, or do you want to talk about that once you get into the dev stream portion?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can mention a little bit. So basically, this is going to be a dev project that is going to be fully, as much as possible, fully live streamed. So we're going to be live streaming every Friday afternoon development of this feature. And so if you are interested in mods at all, you can join in with the live streams and see how we're doing it, how we're building the support into the game for mods, how we're working with Steam to do it, and get in on the ground floor of that. And we'll want to be interacting with you as mod authors, as players, getting your feedback as we're doing the development. So it's going to be really open and transparent development as much as possible. It is something we're not going to be like doing as like a full court press kind of project. We got other things going with other expansions, Branch and Claw and stuff like that. So not everyone at Handelabra is going to be working on this. But it's going to be something we're continuing to work on all the time, every Friday, and live streaming it so that you can be involved and see how it's coming along. So that's kind of the way we're treating the development, at least initially. Because we've never done that kind of thing before, and we think it's if any sort of dev project is appropriate for that, it's this.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, the idea of, number one, so you can watch how we're developing it. But number two, if you're the kind of person who thinks you're going to want to make mods, having you sort of see how we're thinking, and then maybe you saying, hey, that's great, but as a mod author, I would think it would be easier if you could maybe offer this option or something like that. So a lot of we're anticipating, hoping for a lot of back and forth with the community. And because we really want this to be something that is well, and I'll also mention this too. We want it to be a tool for everybody to use, but this is also not a kind of thing where it's like you develop it and release it. We can be having sort of small bits coming out and sort of seeing how the community uses them, and then you say, oh well, this, I like the way this works. Let's sort of move it in this direction. It'll be a far more interactive experience because by its very nature, our mod community is sort of a living, breathing thing. It's not so much of develop a product and release it kind of a thing. So We're very excited for this project.
Awesome. So I think that probably covers the like announcement stuff about Steam Workshop. Obviously, at the end of the stream after the Q&A, we'll be actually doing a kickoff meeting with the developers and getting into actual development and prototyping of the feature to begin with. So yeah, if you've got questions about Steam Workshop, hang on, we'll have a Q&A shortly. Okay, so moving along, there's another sort of almost housekeeping thing we want to talk about, which is we're going to be adjusting the requirements for the mobile versions around the end of the year. And this is mainly because Sentinels Digital is still sort of on a platform from like 2017 at this point, and we needed to move it forward, and part of that is we need to move up the minimum mobile versions. We have actually done something like this for PC in the past. I believe the game originally worked on Windows XP. Windows XP is from like 2001 or something, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it did have to move off of Windows XP. And this is sort of similar, where the minimum iOS version is moving up from 9.1 to 12.2, which essentially is 32-bit devices are not going to be supported anymore. You will still be able to play the latest update that's going to be released by the end of the year, but you won't receive new updates after that. So we're not taking away the game from you. We're just basically saying you're not going to be able to receive updates anymore, so that we can continue to move the game forward. Similarly for Android 4.1 to 5.1, and all of these affect a pretty small percentage of users, but we know you exist, and we're not trying to leave you super behind. But all these devices are like from 2007 or something, or 2013.
Yeah.
I think 2013 is the newest 32-bit iOS device. So they're even from before Sentinels originally came out. So that's just sort of the way of the world, is that things need to move forward, and hopefully that's okay.
Yeah, and just to be 100% clear, in case anybody is wondering exactly what this means, all this means is that if you have a device that cannot be updated to the latest version, that's who we're talking to. If you then get a device that can be updated, then your game will update, and that's fine. It's not like, oh, anybody who bought the game before X no longer gets updates. It has to do with what OS is on your device,
Exactly.
because it won't be supported below a certain number.
Or even if you have, say, an iPad Air that you haven't updated since iOS 9, you can just update it to the newer iOS, and you'll be able to update the game. Yeah. Which is, there's probably more people in that situation than in the previous situation, I think, based on the numbers we have. So we'll be posting a blog post with all the details, like the list of exact devices this is going to affect and stuff. But it's all from 2013 and older. If you have a device from 2014, or even some devices from 2013 are 64-bit. And Android is weirder because like a lot of devices can't upgrade on Android, so we're not moving it too high up on Android for now, anyways. So, but a lot of the modernization stuff is focused on iOS. That like some of the things we can do, we can have features and improvements in the game that we are not able to do because we have to support the old version right now. So,
right.
Okay, so that's that thing. So, other things. I know there's been lots of discussion about what are they going to announce today, and all these things, or some of these things, have been talked about. And we've talked about these in the past. And so we want to address them, and we can talk more about them in the Q&A, of course. So the number one thing that people have on their mind, I think, is Sentinels of Earth Prime. That Kickstarter is still not delivered. I think as of the latest update, they're planning to print it by the end of the year. I think we were originally thinking they would print it by the end of 2017 or something like that, but or 2018. I can't remember.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Our sort of position on that is it's something we would like to do when it exists as an official product. But right now it doesn't exist yet, and there's no, so it's not something we're looking at doing at the moment. Once it exists, we're in talks with them about it.
Just from a biz dev, from a biz dev point of view, I should mention that like all three parties that would be potentially involved are all on the yes, this sounds like something we should do when we can thing. We just can't yet. So like I've been in talks with Chris over at Green Ronin, as well as Paul at Greater Than Games, and obviously we're all excited to have more Sentinels content that existing Sentinels people can play, but also sort of getting the whole Mutants and Masterminds world into the game of Sentinels and the card game of Sentinels as well is something that we think would be really great, especially if there's going to be even more content coming thanks to the Steam Workshop. So yeah, it's something we really, really want to do, but it's just because of all the delays, it's been sort of one of those, we'll get to it when we get to it, and it's kind of still in that spot right now.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to talk more about that. I mean, once it ships, we'll be able to talk about it more. It's kind of the situation.
Yeah.
Console ports. This is something we've been looking more at, and I mean this is related to the modernization thing. Like we can't go to consoles if we're stuck on old platforms of Unity and stuff, and so that's a thing we want to do. I didn't actually talk to you, Jeremy, but if we wanted to talk about the console port in this bullet point on our doc as related to this.
Why not?
Okay.
I mean, they're here to learn about Sentinels, but it's okay.
I mean, it's related because it's a pilot project with one of our other games that we are having ported.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and give this a framing. So earlier this year, we started working with Underbite, who you may know from Sentinels of Freedom. We did obviously the music for Sentinels of Freedom because they want, RELDING Games was like, oh, let's have all the music be very consistent. And so, and we're actually probably going to be working with them potentially on some more Sentinels of Freedom stuff. But they obviously have launched Sentinels of Freedom on consoles. And so we said, hey, we've got all these games that we'd like to have on consoles. So let's maybe start with one that's performing well, but that's a bit of a smaller project than Sentinels. Sentinels has got all these expansions, all these other kinds of things. And so for, most of 2020, they have been working on a console port, specifically to the Switch, for One Deck Dungeon. We cannot tell you yet when to expect that, but it is in process as we speak. I have seen a picture of it running on device, which is very, very cool. And the idea is that, this was going to be a pilot program with them. Like, all right, let's take one of our digital tabletop games, let's get it out on a console, see how it performs. And then if it does well, let's just blast out the rest of our games onto console if we can. So coming soon, TM. I wouldn't quite go to the TM yet, Steel Zeffy, but it is in process and it has been running on device, which is very, very cool. And so that is something that we've wanted. Honestly, it's been in the back of our mind to bring Sentinels to consoles pretty much since we did the Kickstarter for season 2. Honestly, I think this game would do great on console. But it was always a question of like, well, how do we release it? How do we package it? Do we sell it the same way as on Steam, where there's the core game and a bunch of expansions? Do we include all the expansions and sell it as like a $60 game? And then do we have unlocking? One of the things that you can see as a bullet point even further down is the campaign story mode. I've always felt really strongly that for this to be a first-class console game, having some sort of campaign or story mode to play through would really be maybe not absolutely necessary, but would really make for a first-class console experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we would still potentially like to do.
So kind of, as Jeremy said, One Deck Dungeon is our first one, and if we're happy with how that performs and everything, that makes it much more likely we'll be like, all right, let's look at bringing Sentinels or other games to consoles as well. And one sort of sub point to that is one of the things when you port to console is you need to make the game support controllers, and that also would come back to Steam and potentially mobile as well, controller and keyboard support fully throughout the game. So that's something that I know some people have wanted, and that would be part of that. And of course, One Deck Dungeon will have controller support once the port is done. So we're that's something we definitely want to do, and is potentially a future stuff. Localization and translation comes up pretty regularly. This is something we've actually spent a lot of time, but enough time like looking into and estimating and trying to figure out if it makes sense. And it's obviously sort of like a good thing, right? Like porting your game into other languages and so on is a good thing. The problem is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of money and time, and we don't know if it's worth it. And like in terms of like if we spend X amount of dollars, how much revenue that's going to bring in, just as a like raw business thing, it's hard to justify it when other things could be done instead. And so that's something it's always on the table. It's always something we're looking to potentially do. But Sentinels has hundreds of thousands of words of text in not just the cards, but also the game UI and the rules and everything like that. So
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that this is actually very similar to the conversation about the console port of Sentinels, because,
Hmm.
we actually ended up getting several different quotes, and it would not have been prohibitively expensive for us to, for instance, do a full German translation of the core game of Sentinels of the Multiverse. Great. So now we have one of the 18 SKUs that you can buy for this game in the language that you want. But now we've got to do all the other ones. So it's like if we make the core game in German or Spanish or French or whatever, and then someone buys that and now they want to buy expansions, they're going to assume that those are going to be in their language as well. And so it became one of those things where it's like, to do it all up front seemed prohibitively expensive, and to do it piecemeal seemed like kind of a PR disaster. So it's always kind of stuck in this, ideally what would happen is that a publisher would come to us and say, we love this, we'd like to publish this all across the
Hmm.
world, we'll do the
Yeah.
localizations for you. And we've actually had a number of meetings where we almost had that, but we never quite got
Yeah.
there. So it's gonna be one of those things where, as John said, we would love to do it, and if we find a way to do it, we will, but it's we'll just have
Yeah.
to see.
If you're a publisher and you want to take on this task and get a reasonable percent of the revenue for that, then call us.
Yeah.
That's how it works for a lot of video games, actually. It just hasn't come up for us. In the chat, people are talking about the physical game translations. Sentinel's core game has been translated to Brazilian, Portuguese, and German, I believe. And that's like 2% of the translation needed. It's a very
And that's
small
it's like
fraction.
I picked German specifically because
Yeah.
we had a back and forth with Paul about this, because we can have the German translation. Like, there was some, obviously there'll be some rights that have to go into that, but they have
Right.
the ability to get it for us. But as John said, that's like just counting the core game. That's not even 50% of the translation that would be needed to put German into the core
Yeah.
game, because you've got the menus and all the other kind of stuff. And it just then we'd have to get all the other ones as mentioned. And there's actually something with the Portuguese one, is that they actually don't own that particular translation. So there was some other rights issues. This is what happens when you work in intellectual property. There's always sorts of difficulties about just having a thing that works. So
Yeah, and other things that you might not think about are marketing materials and game update. Like, every time we post an update, that would need to be translated. We've actually in the past had a product reminder that was translated into like 20 languages or something, and it
it was at least
becomes
a dozen. Yeah.
yeah. In the industry, there's this idea of like technical debt. It's like, if you build a thing, then you have to continue supporting it, and certain things cost more than others in terms of what they require for future updates and stuff. And it's sort of a form of technical debt that you're giving yourself this future task forever.
Yeah, and I'll mention too that, like,
And customer
since
support. Yeah.
I was at the time the one who was in charge of writing and preparing those updates, and I promise you they were mostly wrong, because basically what it would do is we would, for a point update, it's like, fixed a bug, added a new icon, right? So it would be like, in this, version 3.1.1, blah blah blah. I'd write out the 3 sentences in English, and then I would go to Google Translate, drop it in, translate it to each of the dozen languages, and just copy and paste it back over and hope it was fine. We were lucky that actually one of the devs on it was actually fluent in German, which is one of the reasons why I think we decided to do it up front, was because we knew, oh, well, he can rewrite everything in German and that's fine. But then we ended up adding, and he actually has bought that product, so it still exists and it's still for sale and you can still get it. It's just not ours anymore. We sold it to him when we switched over to being a game company. But yeah, it was technical debt for sure, because, like, a quick hotfix, you still need to now translate. This is a quick hotfix with one bug fix that has to be translated into a dozen languages. So
yeah. So just to, I guess, recap, it's something we do want to do, but it's hard for us to do it and be able to do it. So if it's feasible, it's something we would like to get to. So yeah. Moving along, campaign mode and story mode, Jeremy mentioned briefly. This is something we would like to do still. One of the difficulties with this is it would need a lot of time and involvement from Greater Than Games, specifically Adam and Christopher, who are excellent folks and are often a bottleneck, as you may have noticed from Underbite as well, and for Oblivion and stuff like that. So they are great, but they are only but 2 men, and so
yeah,
They have demands on their time.
The biggest problem with Christopher and Adam is that they want to make everything. Like, so I think they've gotten a lot better at saying no to things in the last few years, but specifically with Adam wanting to do so much of the art on his own for various things, and Christopher, I mean, look, this is their baby. It was the thing that they started their company on, and they always want to make sure it's exactly right. They've gotten a little bit better, obviously working with Sentinels of Freedom and letting them sort of come up with character models and those sorts of things have gotten a little bit better. When we first were starting, we can go back to the historical context here. When we were first starting with this, Adam tentatively said, okay, yeah, if you can get a good artist that'll do it, you can go ahead and they can reimagine my characters. And we did a couple of tests with a couple of different artists. And I mean, they were fine. They just weren't what Adam wanted. And he got really, really ownership-y over it and decided, nope, you know what? If there's going to be pictures of these characters in this game, I'm going to make them all. And so that was when we started we ended up getting all this really great art from Adam for the Sentinels digital game, but it also meant that we had to wait on him to do it, and he was doing art for so many other things as well. So, yeah.
Now that has changed actually lately with the RPG book. The RPG book has art from many different artists, and Adam's sort of moving into more of a creative director role. He's still creating a lot of art, but so I think there's potentially an opportunity there for less, bottleneck on Adam, but there's still a bottleneck on Christopher story stuff.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind too, and everything that I'm going to say from this point forward is absolute amazingly made up stuff, because we've already prototyped, and by prototyped I mean like paper prototype, like written out concepts for how campaign or story mode would work. I had a really interesting idea for like a branching story mode that would be basically tell sort of the full story of every major battle of the multiverse, and you could choose to say like, all right, I'm playing as Legacy, and then Legacy, any battle that Legacy was in, you would play, and the other teammates would sort of be populated either by ones that you chose or ones that were sort of canonically at that battle. But then you could also say, well, you know what, I actually want to play as Tachyon, and then you would get some of the same battles because you would be in the same team with Legacy, but then maybe you'd play different ones. And so I had this big idea about how it would all work, but obviously that would be a really, really big project. And so, we don't know. There's multiple different levels of a story mode or a campaign that could be done. And, we'd like to explore all of them. And again, it just comes down to a question of time and resources.
Yeah. So. And JZC mentioned that Arcane Wonders, they have other artists doing Sentinel stuff too. So yeah, that's definitely a good point.
Yeah, and for the Freedom 5.
Yeah, so there's definitely, it's not Adam blocked necessarily as much anymore, but I mean, he certainly still has a soft spot for the core Sentinels games. So
and I would guess if part of it, I think what would happen in any campaign story mode would be the bridging stuff between battles. So it's like, you finished this battle in Megalopolis, and now Baron Blade is flying away on his mobile defense platform, and you chase him and you're going to fight. Getting you from Megalopolis to the mobile defense platform, there would be like a panel or some dialogue or some kind of something. These are some of the ideas that have been floated, and obviously stuff like that, especially since all the art that's in this game already is Adam's. I'm pretty sure he would want that to be his as well, so that it at least matches from a style point of view. So
yeah, and as Jeremy mentioned
before, I should also mention that the Arcane Wonders Kickstarter does kick off on Monday.
Does it? Okay.
Kicks off on October 20th. So if you go to, I think it's freedom5game.com or something like that, you can sign up to be notified when it goes live next week. So.
Cool. So yeah, and as Jeremy mentioned, one of the sort of best chances for this to happen is related to a console port, and so that's potentially a future route we could go. So all right, and then last, which is for me in the category of it would be really neat and nerds like me would really like it, is a way to access detailed statistics of how you've played the game and how everyone in the world has played the game and how much damage on average does Legacy do on the environment turn or things like that, which is like really neat but really big and hard to justify. So it's yeah, so maybe someday, but don't hold your breath on that, unfortunately, just because decide to do that or one of these other 4 things, right? Like it's hard to decide that. So
exactly. I mean, don't misunderstand me. If Sentinels all of a sudden decided to sell 10 million copies in the next 6 months,
that's true.
We were swimming in cash.
If I can hire someone, just be like, this is your job. This is your job to build the statistics server and engine and go off into a mine and do that for a year. then sure. But we don't have that right now.
Exactly.
Just go full on XCOM with a base management aspect. Yeah, that's just do that in a day, right?
You
I
get the whole
getcha.
thing done in an Excel spreadsheet, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I heard someone made Sentinels in a spreadsheet. I'm not sure what happened with that. All right, so
remember that.
that is the end of our presentation, and now it's time for Jeremy and John to read letters from you. So if you have any questions you've been holding back or questions that you didn't even know you're supposed to ask questions, throw them in the Twitch chat here, and we will answer them to the best of our ability for, I don't know, up to half an hour, 35 minutes.
Sure. So while people are thinking of their questions, I will tell one of the favorite stories about the development of the the digital game. And this is when we were showing the prototype, not quite ready to be released yet, at PAX West, at the time PAX Prime. Not the first year, not in 2011. This was actually in 2014. In Seattle. We were up on the 6th floor, but we actually had and we were in the similar spot, but actually further out into the floor. We had a bigger booth. I think it was it a 10 by 20 or 20 by 20? Whatever it was shared with Greater Than Games, and we had a big digital thing set up. And the demo that we had was you could only play through 3 rounds. Because we assumed, well, there's no way you're going to win in 3 rounds, so we hadn't even coded the end game screen. And it was the first time Christopher actually went hands-on with the game. And so we handed it to him. It had Super Scientific Tachyon as one of the characters. And we were like, all right, so play through this and see what you can do. And the very first time he picked up the game, he beat it in 3 rounds and crashed it because we hadn't made a game yet, because we didn't expect anybody to actually get that far. But that's what happens when the creator of the game goes hands-on sometimes.
Yeah, I think there might be at least a picture or a video from that time. Somewhere.
I believe there is, yes.
Yeah. All right, questions are coming in. So Seamus Butler asks, will you be charging for access to the workshop mod or accepting donations? Will not be the workshop support will not be like charged for. It's going to be just part of the game.
Right.
There is the question of potentially mods can be for money. Like that's something Steam can support is paid mods. That's something we need to talk about with Greater Than Games when the time comes and whatever, but we're not necessarily planning for that, or we don't have any decisions made on that specifically. But that's something that is more between like about the mod authors. I think we have to like allow it to be on, I think, but yeah. And if it's on, then the mod author decides the price or something like that, but that's sort of down the road later on kind of thing. Do you want to alternate questions?
Sure. Is that pick the Baron Blade rocket letter delivery? I don't know.
I like that you don't know about that.
I vaguely know what that is because I seem to remember reading about it or hearing about it. Was it on a letters page or something?
Right. So yeah, on the letters page, Christopher and Adam talked about, I think it was with Vengeance. That's how Baron Blade like invited people to join his team was by sending these rockets with like a letter inside. And then I sent in a question to Christopher that was like, on wrong time and place, who is that letter for? Or like, what's the contents of the letter from that rocket? And they were like, oh no, that's not a letter rocket or something. So good catch, JZC. That's why I put this image, was because of that 5-level deep in joke. And you are on the ball about that.
Very nice.
Napicro says, for the mod workshop, do you plan on having an effect library of pieces to put together cards and effects, or do you want the mods to be more coding heavy for community members to have more control over the mechanics of custom cards? Good question. We'll be getting more into that in the dev stream and stuff in a little bit, but basically it's going to be more coding heavy, but we'll be providing, like, part of what we want to provide is good documentation and examples and templates and things like that, so you can get started easily. And like, you want to make a card that does 3 damage, like here's Thok, like here's what, or Back Fist Strike, right? Here's what Back Fist Strike does. You can like copy that card's code and change the values or whatever. So, and then since you'll be able to use the same code that we do to make cards, you can do anything you want with your cards is the plan. Seamus Butler has a question.
Yeah. So is there going to be difficulties with people creating mods for other people's IPs? Probably. I know that is definitely a thing that happens, and in fact, this is partly, I think, some of the reason why mods work the way they do, which is that if somebody decides that they want to make Wolverine, we don't want to get sued because somebody else made Wolverine. And I'm pretty sure that Steam has got things in place to sort of take care of that. Whether to report something and get it taken down. DMCA takedown notices, et cetera, et cetera. As we start to get to the point where we can actually start having people posting their content, we will have obviously more information about that, and we'll make sure that there's a process for that. Because yes, I agree, that could very easily become difficult for sure.
Yeah, and I think sort of at the end point, even if we sort of suppose we were like, please don't post Marvel stuff or whatever, and someone does anyways, like Marvel can come along and like request a takedown. Like I think that Nintendo does that sort of religiously with their stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you see a Mario mod on anything, it like gets taken down right away from the DMCA stuff. So yeah, it's certainly potentially a difficulty, but hopefully I think our community is pretty good. But there's of course someone is going to create a Wolverine mod, like no matter what we say. So we'll have to figure out what our response is and all that stuff, and that'll be sort of between us and Greater Than Games and the community sort of figuring that out together. The Walking Target has a statement, but a true statement, not a question. Mod interaction with guys will be a headache. Yep. Our code's interaction with guys is a headache. And it was no real difference there.
All right. Weesoj? I don't know. Isn't there supposed to be some definitive edition that Christopher and Adam are working on with updated artwork, first appearance variants for all the heroes and specific scenarios you can play? What is the status of that, or is my information out of date? Here is what I can tell you about that. Nothing. When I asked Christopher, hey, is there anything we can talk about this? He said, if you tell anybody, I will have to kill them and then you. And the simple truth is that we don't actually know much about it beyond what you just asked right there. So I guess it's anyone's guess. We'll see.
There's a rumor that there was a podcast, but we have apparently no recollection of the event in question.
Indeed.
JZC, got ninja'd on that. Nerd with a Pencil asks, if Earth Prime gets the digital treatment, do you foresee it as an add-on to the base SOTM being its own game, relying the workshop to cross characters over? So our plans for that are ideally to have it be a DLC that you can add to your existing Sentinels, if you own Sentinels, and also to have it be its own new game that can have all the other Sentinels DLC. That may or may not be the case, but that's sort of the thing I would like.
Yeah, when we were originally sort of speccing it out, that was the plan, because that is, the main concern that we would have with something like this is that when you want somebody, on the tabletop, anyone can bring a box, and as long as the cards, are all working the same, you can all sort of play together. But on digital, you all have to have a platform to play on. And we already have cross-platform multiplayer, so there wouldn't be any real difficulty if I bought Sentinels of Earth Prime, and then we offer in Sentinels of Earth Prime DLC of like Rook City and Wrath of the Cosmos, somebody could get those, and then someone who owns Sentinels of the Multiverse could buy the Sentinels of Earth Prime, and those people can play together because, the servers in the back end that we handle, that's all handled already because, it's cross-platform, cross-game, doesn't really matter. But it's still yet to be seen. That has been the plan, and I think it would probably be the best way to get the most people to play with the most interesting content. But we just haven't explored it specifically yet because, as mentioned, Sentinels of Earth Prime is still sort of, it's sort of still baking, as it were. So we'll know more once that's out and once we're actually officially working on it, if that day comes.
Yeah, and the real, I think the important thing with that approach is that, it puts that Sentinels of Earth Prime brand sort of on as its own thing too, and not hiding behind the Sentinels of the Multiverse game, which I think is important. Especially, if and when that game ever has expansions. I'm not sure. I think they've talked about they want to do expansions in the future. So, it's important that I think that branding comes across. And I think one thing, the Sentinels of the Multiverse core game would be a DLC in that game as well.
Yes.
So it's kind of an interesting thing. So that's the idea, but obviously TBD.
All right. Unheard Grace asks, will we as modders have access to every currently implemented deck or just a selection of example cards?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but you'll be able to create your own. At least initially, our plan is to focus on supporting modders creating their own new decks and variants for existing decks, and potentially like a few things like a new Oblivion Scion or Shield or something like that. And we'll be providing. We want to provide like example, like we'll probably make brand new example decks in like the mod framework so that you can go from there. So, all right. So much for Musical Swordsman. Okay. Dev confirm Wolverine's the next hero.
Yeah, so Takuma Nuva says, I'm no legal buff, but I think existing IPs and mods shouldn't be a concern unless A, you charge money for it, or B, you are recreating something that actually exists. For example, the decks in Mini Pack 2. And it's true, you are no legal buff, because that is definitely not the way that it works, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You like, it's the same thing. Like, imagine it like this. Napster wasn't charging for the songs that you could download, but it was still not okay.
Yeah.
And so like putting a character who exists, I mean, there's a copyright issue, but there's also trademark issues to keep in mind, like which are different types of intellectual property, and they're both very easy to cross and be on the wrong side of the law. So I promise you, we will have guidance about that when it comes time to actually be doing these things. But for the time being, I wouldn't plan on making your favorite Marvel character or your favorite DC character, or even, from Spawn or any of those others. I would not plan on those.
Yeah, like
Just
be
as a
inspired,
blanket.
but make your own new thing that people can enjoy.
Exactly.
And also, I think it's pretty safe to say if someone makes a mod that's like, here's all the Sentinels DLC, but for free because it's a mod, that's coming down.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because that's not cool. What if there are card effects that you don't have a card for to model after over? Then you got to put on your programming hat. But we're going to be there to help support some of those things. So the more that you're involved in the dev streams and stuff, the more you'll have some voice into like making sure that the things you want will be available in terms of programming.
Indeed.
But like you'll be able to we'll be getting into the details of it, but it's programming in C#. So you can do whatever you want, right? But don't do bad things. Do good things.
Don't do bad things. Yeah, so like, and I think here's a good sort of, I think, way to think about this. Like a new mechanic that would be something like, like for instance, in what's it called? Slay the Spire. There's a type of card that is exhaust, and when you exhaust, it is out of the game for the rest of this thing. And then there's obviously things that can bring it back. We don't have anything that's like exhaust in our game, but what we do have is remove this card from the game. Which is, so like if, when certain things are killed by, the final wasteland, they are removed from the game. Like you could potentially come up with a way to do an exhaust mechanic by using stuff that's already there or repurposing it in some other way. And if there's nothing there that does exactly what you're looking for, as John said, it's up to you to sort of figure out how to code that and make it work. So
yeah.
I hope I wasn't speaking too outside of the dev world since I don't write code anymore. But that seemed like
I think that makes sense. I mean, obviously, it's going to be easier to make cards and characters that use the things that already exist in the game. But there's nothing stopping you from adding new stuff. Certain things may be like, if it's important enough or like, I don't know. Well, it's more of a balance to like, if it makes sense for us to like add something as a general feature in the game to support something that's common in mods, that would be a thing we would do, right? But that would be sort of part of the development process of the workshop stuff.
All right, now we got JCC asks, would story mode be a DLC or a free update? Also on the DLC front, every time there's a listening party, the art showcase makes me yearn for a digital art book DLC. I'll answer the second one first. That is something that we've actually, it's been on our to-do list for a while now, actually, because there have been several requests for it. Because there's really, there aren't a lot of great ways to see the artwork nice and big from in-game. And it's something we've wanted to do, but again, it's one of those things where it's like, do we spend a bunch of time putting this thing together? Or do we, finish the mod support, or do we do whatever?
Right.
So it's something we definitely want to do, and it is on our radar. So it's good to know that there are still people out there who are interested. With regards to how would story mode come in, that is also an open question. If it turns out that, like, all right, we're gonna do a console version, and maybe we're gonna kickstart a console version, and if we consider the story mode to be part of that, if it gets paid for as part of porting it to a console, I could see a scenario where we would just add that to the existing game for everybody else who already has it, probably. But if it's the kind of thing where we decide it's going to be its own project, it might be slightly different. We just don't know
Yeah.
yet. There's too many unknowns to know exactly what the model for that is going to be at this point. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I can't give you a definitive answer.
Part of the tricky thing with a feature like that is like, if you think about like a new player gets the game, are they going to expect to be able to play that thing or to have to pay for it extra, right? So they probably don't expect to have to pay for that extra, right? And so that's one of the things that makes it hard for us to look at in terms of like, how does it work monetizing? And then you look at like, how could a Kickstarter work or things like that? Or so the console thing is, I think, a good way to think about it, because you obviously have people who don't have the game already who are going to be getting it, and they're going to not expect to be like, oh, I want to play the campaign, I have to pay now. Like, I've already bought the game. So that's something we would definitely be looking at. Like, how does that work? Nerd with a Pencil asks, what kind of characters would appear in an example deck? Well, I've been thinking about Baron Jeremy. I've been thinking about John Mitron X. I don't know. We'll see. Could be some in-jokes in there.
The Argent Mark Adept. Does that work? That tracks, right? The Argent Mark Adept.
The Jean of Mark Adept. Just go.
John of Mark Adept.
Yes, probably some Handelabra appearances in there. Maybe we'll see what we come up with.
Yeah, like a Sentinels style deck with all 6 of us, or 7 of us, I guess, as characters. Oh, yeah. That might be fun.
That's a good idea too.
All right. The Walking Target. I guess I never looked into Steam Workshop stuff. Are mods automatically published to the community, or can you do private ones just for your own use? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I guess there's kind of 2 parts. There's the first thing to do is actually have the game support mods, like, at all. Like, mods aren't like really Steam specific, just our game happens to be on Steam. And Steam Workshop is a mechanism for like getting the mod posted up to Steam servers and having the mod be downloaded to the players and made available to the game. But like, even before that, the game needs to be able to, like, I have some files on the hard drive that I need to load that are the mod. And so that's sort of the first step. And so because of that, you can make private mods and not have them on Steam Workshop and have them, just load them outside of Steam Workshop. And that's going to be the case just because the game has to be able to load files from your hard drive. 99% of players are going to be getting mods from the workshop because that's super easy. You just like go to this mod page, click subscribe, and launch the game, and you have the mod. There's like no downloading from a website or like a separate website and finding the files and putting it in, and like, it just makes it super easy. It's hosted by Valve automatically. The game can connect to it automatically. So it's like a really easy way to do it. And so, yeah, if you look at other games that have mods, it's the same basically. So.
Yeah, and as somebody who like cut my teeth on Civilization 4 mods back when modding was absolutely not supported in the Mac version of the game, I can tell you that you should be very grateful for the way the Steam Workshop works, because I remember having to like, okay, you have to download this mod, but unfortunately the Mac version is published by a different company, so that version's actually 3 versions out of date from the thing, so I have to find the old version of the mod, go in, find the file, edit it, change it out. It was just and it was fun. I got to play the mods, but oh my god, was it frustrating.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the mod developers are that when you're developing a mod, you have it as a local file privately already, right? So it's kind of the same for if you want to do out of workshop mods as well. But so yeah, so it's possible, but going to be the main distribution method is what's I think very helpful, because we could just be like, Sentinels is going to have mod support and not do Steam Workshop, and it's just going to be like no one's going to use it because it's a big pain and it's hard to find mods and it's hard to install them and hard to deal with them.
Right.
Uh,
All right. Frenzied Havoc asks, I'm curious what percentage of development time is spent on each project nowadays? That's actually an interesting question, since we just had a board meeting yesterday, so we were going over a lot of that kind of stuff, actually, in terms of... Yeah, go ahead.
It changes all the time, I guess, is part of it, depending on what projects we're working on or focusing on and what's coming out. So recently, as Spirit Island was in early access and progressing to development, the main percentage of development was on Spirit Island. There's always some percentage devoted to maintenance of existing things. But even like during that, there's, like starting work on the challenge modes and things for Sentinels that just came out, because we started working on that like probably a couple months ago at least, because there's a timeline of like, you have what you need to do, and then you're working on it, and you're going into beta test, you're internal testing and beta testing, cycling through that. So there's a period of time, and then at certain stages, like, we ship a build to beta testing, so there's going to be a period of time where the beta testers are playing with it, where we might not have any changes to make until we know what the result of that is, right? So then that developer can go work on some other project at that time, until some bugs get reported, and they go back, and so it flips around.
Yeah, and the makeup of our team also makes it very interesting, because the only person on our team who really only does one thing is David. David is basically an engine programmer. Sometimes we'll pull him to do some stuff in some Unity stuff and other things as well, but like that's the main thing he writes engine stuff. Mm-hmm. Jean-Marc, who also writes engine stuff, also does music. So like there will be weeks where it's like he spends his entire week doing the engine stuff, and then the next week he spends the entire week doing music stuff. And so it really changes on a per person basis as well. Obviously people like Krista and Cam, who aren't necessarily doing development work on the games themselves, still might be doing support tasks. So like Cam is the one who spends the majority of his time organizing and handling beta stuff, bug reports, user reports, etc. Krista is our sort of frontline customer support, but she also does so much of the marketing work. So like the guys music video was 100% Krista. I mean, she knocked that one out of the park. Basically, we handed it to her, said, okay, make a fun thing for these songs. And all of them are great, but the guys one is just like over and above. But sometimes she'll do some of the graphic work. Like if we need images edited or resized that are going to go in game, she might be doing some of that. Jen is another one who she does a lot of graphic work, mock-ups, pre-visualization and stuff like that, but she also does a lot of the Unity work, a lot of the UI stuff. So our team is varied in that it's not like, oh, we don't have a whole team of people who do nothing but pre-visualization art, and another person who does all the 3D work, and another person who does all the programming work. People are sort of moving around, but like as John said, yeah, whatever our big project in the world is, that gets the lion's share of the work, and then the other things sort of slot in as needed.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, so it's hard. Like that answer would change every week. So
yeah, pretty much. I can tell you that bottom of the ninth has gotten the least amount of work of any of our projects.
Yeah, but actually we are going to spend a little maintenance time on that this year, I think. But it's still, yeah. Unfortunately, bottom of the ninth is the lonely redheaded stepchild or whatever.
It is.
Cool. So we got, I think. What was this? Yeah, a random thought from Runner and a question, but cool to see hero decks for the heroes that are in the mission decks being made. Yeah, that'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
How long until we get a VR version of the game where we're standing right in the battlefield watching them fight? Probably a while. Although, to be fair, we actually did. So, okay. If you've heard of Temple Gates Games, that's the company that did like Roll for the Galaxy, Race for the Galaxy. And they're sort of, I think she's their president and CEO, Teresa Duringer. She cut her teeth on VR after she left AAA gaming. And so she made a couple of VR things, but her company made Ascension in VR, where you actually are sort of standing and the cards are sort of floating in front of you and you can tap them. And I had some preliminary conversations with her about doing a Sentinels in VR. The main problem is that she actually wrote her own engine for Ascension, or their company wrote an engine for Ascension. And since we were written in Unity, it would have been prohibitive to try, and it wasn't just like a quick port, like, oh well, let's just
Right.
put it into some interesting environments and do whatever. It would have been basically a rewrite. So it would have been too much, and who knows what VR is doing these days. I love VR. I have a PSVR, but it still, I think, has yet to reach sort of mass penetration. So
yeah, maybe someday. Ideally, when it's like, computer play Sentinels, and it's just like an AI that does it. Yeah, so Remote Air is thinking of some ideas for Steam Workshop. Yeah, so if the character doesn't have art or the characters in the panels, could there be placeholders? Yeah, that's something we actually were talking about, like music placeholder stuff. If someone makes an environment deck but they don't have music for it, like what would we do? Or if there's no artwork yet. Right now, there is actually options in Sentinels. You can turn off the artwork for the characters, and it just sort of shows like their names, or for the environment backgrounds, you can turn it to just be like a gradient panel. So that's something we could, that's in there already, but we could potentially, enhance that a little bit, since, you might be playing multiplayer with a lot of mods and you want it to at least look like something and not just blank. But yeah, one thing that we want to do is, as part of our like support and documentation, is like try to maybe help create lists of resources, like, hey, here's a library of Creative Commons music or artwork that you could not like we would create this artwork, but like we would like, maybe it's a wiki or whatever, where it's like maybe you could go look at this stuff and jam it together, or find stuff in here that works for your cards, to just sort of help you get at least something started if you don't have an artistic bone in your body like me. So for workshop,
Crazy provinces, for workshopping new variants, would there be a way to set unlock conditions? I hadn't even considered that idea.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Probably not.
But yeah, probably not. Yeah, I think with mod variants, it's like you download the mod and you want to play it, right?
Yeah. Now, that's not to say that there couldn't be, after this is all built and people start making, there's certainly the possibility to make things like full conversion mod. And in something like that, that's obviously a much more full featured, a much
Right.
more work, and that would be much further down the line. Something like that for sure. Like in the way that, like, lately I've been playing the Downfall mod for Slay the Spire, and those are like, you're basically playing Slay the Spire, but playing as the villains against the heroes, and it's set up exactly the way the core game is, where as you play, as you unlock, you can unlock new cards for the characters and unlock new relics and things like that. So like, if somebody were to put the work in to build a full conversion mod, potentially. If it's somebody just making a simple variant, then I would say probably not.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly potentially down the line. I don't think that's something we would focus on initially, but it's a good idea. Good question.
All right, so it is now 2:23 p.m. Eastern here. I'm going to need to be getting going because I got to go pick up my son from school. But John is going to be. Are you going to be transitioning directly into the dev stream, or is there going to be a break?
Maybe we'll take a short break, and yeah, we'll get into the dev stream in just a second.
All right, so thank you everybody for coming by. It has been an amazing 6 years of the digital multiverse, and we're looking for 6 more. The next 6 start right now, and I think we've got some pretty good ideas for what those are going to look like. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for everything you've done over the years. If you are a backer on the Kickstarter, thank you for helping us get this far. We wouldn't have gotten this far without you. And I can't wait to show you what we've been working on and how it grows over the next few years. And then I'm going to get off and I'll let John close it up. So goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. And stay tuned. We'll get the dev stream started with a kickoff with the dev team. And we'll be talking about Steam Workshop and getting started on it. So thanks for tuning in. And we'll be right back. Just stay on the Twitch page and you won't have to go anywhere. See you later.